What was meant to be a light-hearted, practical joke turned into something far more astounding. The soft-spoken black janitor who always wore frayed shoes seemed to accidentally get himself locked in a CEO's office for the entire night. While the security team was in full-blown panic mode, the CEO was livid, and at the same time, whispers of theft were floating around one of Chicago's leading investment firms. But the moment they opened the heavy mahogany door, they were met with no sign of chaos. There were no broken safes, no perched heaps of shattered glass, no valuables seized. Instead, they found a simple flash drive and a note, alongside the shattered pieces of a lifetime's worth of deception. If you believe in unshakable dignity, quiet justice, and concealed greatness, this is your story. At precisely 7:03 p.m., the cleaning staff logged out of Ashbourne Financial's 47th floor. One of them, however, did not show up to the elevator. Marcus Wynn, the night custodian, was the one who did not follow the rest of the crew. Nobody called out to him, so he is easily forgettable. 58. Hunch-shouldered, soft-spoken, and a cap pulling down over weary eyes. Each day he showed up early and stayed late. And in the glass and steel tower, he shuffled like a specter wielding a mop. He was the kind of man people ignored, not the kind who drew attention. That did not bother him. Friends weren't on the agenda. He had a role to fulfill, and a promise he intended to uphold. On that strange, memorable evening, Marcus was not the kind of person who usually caught the attention of security. However, in this specific lingerie, he was a noteworthy individual. As he crossed janitor lines, which were only to be crossed upon direct invitation, and made his way to the executive area containing the CEO's private office, security officers took note. At security monitoring stations, he was visible until all systems went dark. At that moment, he was visible to all security monitoring stations until all systems went dark. Initially, turning cameras off was thought to be a system glitch. However, upon returning in the morning at 5 a.m., the cleaning crew was just not able to find any of the crew of night cleaners. To be specific, Marcus was missing without a measurable trace to him clocking out. He had been ID scanned at executive area at 20:51 and did not reappear. He had either fainted, got locked in, or worse, as the whispers around the office suggested, he had stolen something. Hurrying the guards along, the silver-haired powerhouse and the company's CEO, Jonathan Royce, was already on his way to the office when the guards finally managed to pry the door open. Yet the contents did not match the expectations. Far more orderly than usual, the office room was scrupulously tidy, with not even a shred of paper, dislocated and every pen placed properly. Despite the disheveled office and in chaos with the presence of a small black flash drive, a handwritten note saying, "Mr. Royce, I kept my promise. Now keep yours." A yellowed manila envelope. There was no trace of Marcus Wynn, not in the building, the parking lot, or the street. He had vanished. A single neatly folded page from a journal dated from 1988, with a single name circled in red: Marcus Wynn, valedictorian candidate. Roosevelt High School was the contents of the envelope. That made Royce's jaw tighten. Below it was a black and white snapshot of Marcus as a youthful graduate, beaming in a gown and holding a diploma. What came next would shake the entire firm to its core. Jonathan Royce was silent for a full minute. With a piercing gaze, he sat in his leather chair, fixated on the outdated high school picture as if it was a puzzle piece for his world of tailored blazers, luxury handbags, and quarterly earnings. Yet it was, in ways he had tried to forget. He recognized Marcus Wynn, not as the janitor, not as some faceless employee, but as the boy who bested him. Roosevelt High, 1988, a dilapidated public school on the south side of Chicago. Marcus had been the top student, a quiet genius, a model student who never skipped class and had a sparkling GPA alongside teachers, triple-checking their records. And Jonathan Royce, back in those days just Johnny, a boy whose life was divided between affording Chicago's elite private high school and enduring the public school system. He was intelligent and had abundant ambition, but had always been second to Marcus. Until the scholarship, there had only been one, a full ride to Dartmouth. But only if one was the valedictorian. Both boys competed for both with equal odds. Marcus came out on top when the final grades were released. He had won fair and square, until rather mysteriously his transcript was flagged for plagiarism. A sudden anonymous tip suggested Marcus had written his senior thesis under someone else's name. Proving this allegation was impossible, but it was convincing enough for the school board to disqualify him pending investigation. Jonathan got the scholarship. Marcus? He was scrubbed from the yearbook, scrubbed from the honors wall, and scrubbed from all future records. Jonathan never admitted what he had done. He never had to. Until now. Royce plugged in the flash drive. Inside was a folder titled, "The Last Floor They Forgot to Sweep." There were documents, emails that had been scanned and labeled, and whistleblower complaints, containing hidden pay freeze underreporting and withheld severance, Wando injuries that were never reported to human resources, and names. Lots of names. Dozens of employees who had been quietly laid off or undercompensated, or replaced with no benefits. Each file bore a timestamp. They were organized and cross-referenced. Some were 12 years old, and every single file had one thing in common. Marcus Wynn had kept a copy. Beneath those files were a single video. It started with poorly pixelated surveillance from 2 years prior, a boardroom discussion full of tension. Jonathan Royce. No one cares about the bottom floor. They mop, they vanish, they're replaced. Don't waste my time with ethics. That was the end of the video. Royce looked withdrawn and sick, and his skin was ghostly white. Marcus hadn't just worked as a janitor. For more than a decade, he'd been watching, recording, and archiving information and evidence, quietly and patiently. Now he had chosen to entrust everything to the CEO. But why? Why not go public? Why not destroy everything? Royce noticed there was a final line which read, "You once stole my future. I won't steal yours, but I need you to remember, dignity can't be swept away." The entire executive board received the call for the emergency meeting. That very night, more than 40 employees had their health benefits reinstated. 3 lawsuits which had been filed were settled silently. Moreover, a new foundation was formed providing a $2.5 million initial investment from the personal account of the CEO, which was dubbed Win Initiative for Second Chances. Although he never returned, he made a statement by his absence. 2 days after Marcus Wynn disappeared from Ashbourne Financial, he was being talked about in spaces that valued dignity over drama. "It's the janitor that outclassed the CEO," read a viral Reddit post. There's no photograph provided, no evidence, simply a story. As noted in one of the comments, "My cousin worked in that building. Said he never spoke unless spoken to, but always held the door. Once stayed 2 hours only to cover up a pesky sink leak no one cared about. Never noticed a man beneath anyone, though." Another, "Remember him well. Found a lost bracelet once. Returned it 2 hours later to a receptionist personally. She sobbed. Was a gift from her deceased mother. In the press, no crew could locate him. They claimed no address and no social media could be found. Not even HR had a courtesy forwarding number. It seems Marcus had simply vanished." But the things he had left behind were far more revealing. In a calm Missouri township 300 miles south, a certain community center had reopened, one that previously had closed down for a number of years due to lack of funds. The center had clearly been given a new name, Wynn Center for Youth and Skill. Inside were 2 laptops, a blackboard, and some folding chairs. Also towards the back, at the corner by the boiler room, Marcus Wynn could be found. He sat on the floor cross-legged, helping a 9-year-old boy untangle a second-hand projector's plug. No cameras, no grand opening, no announcements. Only a man who had done it all for himself, quietly starting anew. This time for others. In the meantime, everything had changed at Ashbourne Financial. Jonathan Royce, the previously untouchable CEO, had started arriving earlier than everyone else. Not for status, not for attention, but because for the first time in his life, he was trying to listen. He had created a new, internal division named Win Compliance, hiring former employees who had once been let go unfairly, to investigate and protect others like them. In every board meeting, there was now a single framed quote on the wall behind his chair, "Dignity can't be swept away." He never told anyone who said it. He didn't have to. What Marcus had done wasn't revenge, it was restoration. He didn't burn the system. He rewired its conscience, all without yelling, without protest, without ever needing to be seen. Because some people don't need attention to make change, they just need a reason. It was nearly a year later when their paths crossed. Again, not in a skyscraper, not in a boardroom, but in a church basement. lit by a single flickering fluorescent light. With the smell of chalk and worn carpet in the air, Jonathan Royce had come to speak. Quietly. No press. The Wynn Center had invited him to share business tips with underprivileged teens, and he had said yes, surprising even himself. He arrived in a suit, though it felt wrong. The kids wore oversized hoodies, hand-me-downs, and the wide-eyed look of survival. He almost turned back, until he saw Marcus. Not in front, not commanding attention, just sitting in the back corner, same old cap, scribbling notes for a lesson plan. Their eyes met. Jonathan froze. Marcus just nodded once. No smile, no anger. Just a simple, quiet acknowledgement. That was all. After the talk, Royce waited in the hallway. He didn't know what he was going to say. He had imagined this moment too, many times, 1,000 apologies, a shaking hand, maybe even an outburst. But when Marcus finally walked past him with a stack of math books under his arm, Jonathan only whispered one word: why? Marcus stopped, didn't turn. Because, he said softly, if I'd taken revenge, you wouldn't be here now, and those kids wouldn't have a future. Royce's throat tightened. He nodded slowly, not expecting forgiveness, but receiving something better: perspective. The next day, Jonathan sent an anonymous donation to the center. Laptops, supplies, a part-time tutor. No name attached. He also made one final change in his company. Every new hire, no matter the position, was required to read a short printed essay during onboarding. It was written by Marcus Wynn. The title? The Last Floor. In it, he wrote, "There's a floor in every company no one looks at, where the quiet ones clean up after the loud ones, but it's on those floors that dignity either lives or disappears. I swept those floors. I saw what others ignored, and I chose not to leave them dirty. Sometimes the people we overlook are the ones holding the truth. Sometimes justice doesn't arrive with noise, it arrives with stillness. And sometimes the greatest power is simply not to become what hurt you,